There are many different ways that you can make a shaker card, and today I'm going to show you my two favorite ways to make them. The first way that I'm going to show you is where the shaker is actually a part of the card front, and the second way is going to be where the shaker sits on top of the card front. Hey everyone, I'm Mindy Egan. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to have all of my supplies that I'm using today linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. The first shaker card that I'm going to share with you is this Sandcastle card. So the Sandcastle itself is the actual shaker portion. So I'm going to be remaking this for you in today's video. Some of the supplies I'm using today are a part of the brand new June 2025 Pretty Pink Posh release, including the Sandcastle Shaker, Shoreline Border, Summer Script, and the Sentiment Strips Summer version. The shaker card for the sandcastle is going to actually be a part of my card front. So before I do any die cutting, I want to create kind of a beach scene in the background. I'm going to use Sandy Beach ink from Gina K Designs and a blending brush from Pink Fresh Studio. This blending brush is super fluffy, so it's going to make a really soft background for me. I'm starting at the top of a piece of white cardstock cut to 4¼ by 5½. So I'm going to blend most of my card front, but kind of skipping down towards the bottom because that is where my shoreline is going to be. Then I'm going to take the base piece for the sandcastle and I'm going to place it on my card front and hold that down with a low tack tape and run that through my die cut machine. So what that's doing is creating a window for my shaker card. Then I'm going to take that same base piece and die cut it from some Fawn cardstock from Spellbinders. And then we can start building our outline for our shaker window. So you can use all or just a couple of these pieces, but all of these pieces fit inside of your shaker. What this is going to do is create the window to see through into your shaker card portion where all of our shaker bits will be. So after I run that through, you can see this creates that really fun outline in that sand color. So it's going to fit really well into my beach scene. Also on that die are three flags, which are all together. So I'm going to die cut that from red cardstock, and that's going to give me three separate flags for the top of my sandcastle. I'll then take the Shoreline Border Die, and there's four different shorelines that you can use. I'm going to use this one that has the waves are kind of spread apart a little more, and I want it going at a diagonal. So I'm going to die cut that out of white cardstock, but I want this to look like water. So I'm going to take some Ocean Mist ink from Gina K Designs, again with a large blending brush from Pink Fresh Studio, and I'm going to ink blend most of this in that light blue, kind of having it fade off a little bit. So you can see when I match this up to my card front, it's going to look like there are some water kind of rolling in onto the sandy beach, which I think is really fun. Next, I'm taking some double-sided adhesive tape and I'm going to place this all around the back of my panel. So this is the panel with my window for the sandcastle. And then I'm going to take a tape runner and just add it to those little pieces for the in between the towers of the sandcastle. I have a piece of acetate that's also cut to 4¼ by 5½. I removed the backing of that double-sided tape and I'm placing the acetate over that exposed adhesive. So that's going to create our window so that all of our shaker bits don't fall out. And then I'm going to place the outline on top of that. I'm using a liquid glue to apply to the back of my sandcastle, kind of tap off any excess so that it doesn't kind of squeeze onto my acetate and leave any marks. And then that's going to fit perfectly into the window of my front panel. Then we can create our well for our shaker pieces. So I am using kind of this thick foam tape from Altenew, and I'm going to place this all around on the back of my panel. The most important thing when it comes to foam tape and creating your well is you want all of your foam tape butted up right next to each other. We don't want any little areas or holes for our shaker bits to escape from. So I'm going all the way around the cardstock, but then I'm also going to put a strip right underneath the sandcastle because wherever that is open, that's where my shaker beads are going to fall. And they don't need to be over the entire back of the panel. So it's just going to be in this little section. But I did want to make sure I provided enough stability around the card front. Now you can fill your shaker window with whatever type of embellishments you want in here. You just want to make sure that they are flat enough so that it doesn't bulk up past your foam tape. I filled mine with some iridescent mini dots and then a chocolate shaker bead mix. Something that I like to do before removing the adhesive from my foam tape is take a strong tape and hold the corners down. Because I noticed that once I start removing the backing of the foam tape, my card wants to curl up and I don't want it to do that. So I just tacked the corners down, removed all of the backing of the foam tape, and then I'm placing a piece of that Fawn cardstock over the top of my foam tape, pressed down really well to secure that in place. And then I can remove those corners. So they'll come off pretty easy because I just have the very edge of the corners tacked down. So now I have a great shaker panel. So there is a little bit of thickness to this, but you're going to have that when it comes to your shaker cards. I trimmed off any excess that was hanging off the edge, and I can add my shoreline down in that bottom corner using a tape runner. I can then take my flags. I'm going to add a liquid glue behind them and attach them to the top of my sandcastle. So there's one for each of the towers. So this is the first way that I like to make shaker cards is where it's actually a part of the card front itself. And then once everything is done, I can add this to a side folding or a top folding card base. Now for a sentiment for this, I'm using the Summer Script word die. I die cut it once out of a matte gold cardstock and I die cut it three more times from a white cardstock. I added liquid glue to the top of each of those white die cut pieces and then just using my tweezers, I can go through and quickly pick each one up. And then I just use my fingers to kind of squeeze it and make sure everything is lined up perfectly. The next thing is adding a small sentiment under that, and I'm using this Sentiment Strips Summer stamp set. I picked one out that I thought would match perfectly for the front of the card. I'm going to stamp this on black cardstock. So I'm conditioning that with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to ink up my sentiment in a white pigment ink and sprinkle on some white embossing powder, which again is another one of my favorite ways to do some heat embossing because I feel like the white with the white just really hides any imperfections. I'll then melt that with my heat tool and I'll give that a few seconds to cool off. And then I will take a Swiffer cloth and kind of buff over that to remove any of that excess powder. I will trim this down with my paper trimmer so it's going to be a thin strip. So now I can add my sentiments to the front of my card. I'm adding liquid glue behind the word summer. I'm going to place that right over the top of my shoreline and then also some liquid glue behind my sentiment. Now I did trim down a few other pieces of that black cardstock to fit behind it just to layer that up. So that is the first way that I like to make my shaker cards is where it's a part of the card front itself. Now I'm going to show you the second way that I like to make shaker cards. And this time I'm going to create this seashell card, which is super pretty. It's another product out of the brand new release. But of course, either one of these techniques you can use with any type of shaker card that Pretty Pink Posh has to offer because they make just the greatest shaker elements. To recreate this card, I am going to use the watercolor oval stencil, the Seashell Shaker, the stitched coral die, and then once again, I'll use the Sentiment Strips Summer stamp set. I already have my coral die cut out and ink blended with just some various colors of ink. We have purples, some coral colors, and some of these nice bright greens. So I will save those for my card project. For the shaker portion, I'm going to use this I think it's called Seaside from Spellbinders. It's one of my favorite colors, beautiful light kind of aqua blue. And I'm going to die cut the base layer twice from that cardstock. Then I'm going to take this shaker portion, I'm going to line it up within those stitched lines and run that through the die cut machine, and that will create our outline for our shaker portion. I'm also going to use the base piece to die cut out a piece of acetate. Sometimes that can be a little tricky, and I never remember the tricks to die cut acetate. So I'm just kind of going over the outline with my scissors to finish trimming that out. Then I can line up my window over the top of the acetate. And to do that, I'm just going to use a little bit of liquid glue. I'm going to go around all of the outer edges and also those inside lines. I can place this over the top of the acetate. And then what I like to do is place something heavy on it, like even my Misti stamping tool or an acrylic block, and let that sit so the liquid adhesive really dries on there well. While that's drying, I'm going to create my background using the watercolor oval stencil. I lined that up centered on a piece of white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Once again, I'm using the Ocean Mist ink from Gina K Designs and a blending brush from Pink Brush Studio. I'm going to start by going around the outer edges and kind of having it fade off as it gets towards the center. For a little bit of added interest, I'm going to take the base piece of my seashell and I'm also going to add some ink blending to that. I start at the bottom of the seashell and kind of blend up towards the center. So this is what you're going to see through my shaker window. Now, there are different ways that you can do this. My personal favorite way is to take some foam strips and I remove the backing off of them. By removing the backing, that allows me or allows that foam strip to be flexible and I can work my way around that outside edge. Now, yes, this can be a little tedious or time consuming, but I just like this better than taking multiple stacks and layering them together because that's a lot of times what people will do is they will die cut out that window multiple times from cardstock and layer it together. I just really hate wasting that much cardstock. So I prefer to take the extra time to build up my well with those foam strips. But you do what works best for you. Now, I think my ink might still be a little wet on that background piece, so I am just taking some anti-static powder tool and rubbing it over it, and then I am going to fill my shaker well. This also can be a little tricky because you don't want any of those shaker pieces to bounce or spill onto your exposed adhesive. Because remember, I took the backing off of the foam strips already, so that's all exposed adhesive. Now, I am just kind of carefully spooning on some of these Aqua Shimmer. I think they're like a confetti mix. The Aqua Shimmer is so, so pretty inside of your seashell shaker bits. I recommend using any kind of color shaker mix that matches your background. Now, I'm also taking some clear confetti mix and then also some of those iridescent mini dots. Then I'm going to take my liquid glue and I'm adding dots of this right on top of that exposed adhesive on the foam strip. I'll take my backing piece, flip it over, line that up with my shaker window, and then just make sure to press down so everything secures together nice. We don't want any of those pieces falling out. So that is creating our shaker portion that's going to be kind of separate from our card front. They actually are really fun. I think if maybe we added some sort of tag piece in the back, you could even turn it into something you could hang in your window. So I did speed this portion up. This is just putting the rest of the card together. I really wanted the focus to be on that shaker portion, but you can see I have everything lined up and placed where I want it to go out of that stitched coral die set. And I just added everything with a tape runner. My sentiment went on top that I had stamped and heat embossed once again on black cardstock. So I added that with liquid glue down at the bottom of my seashell. I also had added some of that clear confetti mix around my seashell so it looks like bubbles. Then here is the finished sandcastle one. So that one is where the shaker is actually a part of the card front. And then there is also a bucket shaker card, a sand bucket shaker card I created. And I did this one just like I did with the sandcastle. But I just wanted to show you that this is another product that's available from the June 2025 release from Pretty Pink Posh. So those are my two favorite ways of creating a shaker card. Like I said, there's lots of different ways. Everybody each has their own little trick or hack to creating with them. These I just wanted to share with you in my process, and I love how they turned out in this really fun summery beach scene. All of my supplies are linked down below in the video description and over on my blog. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I will see you again real soon.